Okay, good morning, everybody. My name is Amy Barrett, and I'm the Executive Director of ULI South Carolina, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to our second installment of our Coffee and Conversation series honoring Black History Month. Um, um, if you joined us last week, we had a nice introduction to Melanie Brown, who was interviewed by Andy Gowder. Melanie was able to tell us a little bit about herself and a little bit about what we're planning under her leadership as our ULI South Carolina Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Chair. This morning, we're joined by Melanie Brown again, who's going to serve as our moderator, Tedd Moyd, Shayla Merritt, and Kristy Ellenberg. And our topic of conversation is closing the social determinants of health gaps to create and sustain thriving communities. And then the series is 8:30 to 9:15 every Wednesday through February. So I hope you will join us on February 24th when our panels are going to be, again, Melanie Brown. We'll moderate a conversation with Tammy Hoy and Amber Stewart. We're going to be talking about financial institutions' role in creating and sustaining thriving communities. And then on March 3rd, we'll be talking about the role of policy in creating and sustaining thriving communities. Again, Melanie's going to serve as our interviewer, and we'll have Dr. Lee Gill of Clemson and House of Representatives Marvin Pendarvis. So book your calendars, and you'll be seeing some more ULI emails about that. So we hope you will join us. Before we get started, just a couple Zoom tips too about how to optimize your viewing and listening this morning. So we're going to ask, if you're not one of the panel members, to go ahead and turn your cameras off during the conversation portion of today's program. And if there's time allotted at the end, if we have time, I'm going to invite everybody to turn the cameras back off so we can continue the conversation. But we do have a tight schedule today, so we'll see how that goes. Just a reminder to keep yourself muted if you're not speaking, so that helps us reduce our background noise. And then we also recommend that you set your Zoom to gallery view, so you'll see not only our two panelists, but our four panelists today. That kind of helps just optimize your viewing there so you can see our folks in conversation. And then we also invite you to feel free to use the chat box to share comments and ask questions, and we'll all kind of help moderate that chat box and the comments and questions we see coming in that way. Always like to take a minute to thank our ULI South Carolina annual sponsors. We truly appreciate the continued support of these organizations. Nearly half of ULI South Carolina's annual budget is derived from our annual sponsorship campaign. And these folks and organizations are truly critical to advancing ULI's mission in South Carolina, which is to provide leadership in the responsible use of land and for creating and sustaining thriving communities worldwide. So thank you very much to our sponsors. And now just a quick introduction to our panel, our conversation participants this morning. Melanie Brown is the president and CEO of Restoration 52 LLC, an upstate South Carolina-based minority and woman-owned real estate development firm rooted in health. Restoration 52 brings together non-traditional partnerships to develop affordable and workforce housing solutions that are intentionally designed to close costly health equity gaps. Melanie, as you learned last week, if you joined us for our coffee and conversation last Wednesday, Melanie is also ULI South Carolina Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Chair and has been really instrumental. We thank you so much, Melanie, for helping us design and develop this coffee and conversation series this week for honoring Black History Month. We are also joined this morning by Kristy Ellenberg. We'll learn a little bit more about Kristy's work here as the Director of Collaborative Partnerships and Strategic Initiatives for DHEC's Environmental Affairs. In this capacity, Kristy is focused on partnership building, strategic planning, collaborative decision-making, meeting facilitation, nonprofit board governance, and training needs. She is also a member of ULI South Carolina's advisory board. We're also grateful to have with us this morning Shayla Merritt, who is the marketing and communications manager for local architecture, engineering, and interior design firm, Stevens-Wilkinson. In her role, Shayla is responsible for overseeing all marketing, communications, and business development opportunities and initiatives for the firm's South Carolina office. A proud native of Buffalo, New York, this cold weather has nothing on Shayla. Shayla is a graduate of both Syracuse University and University of South Carolina, where she earned a Bachelor of Science in Public Affairs, Bachelor of Arts in Mathematics and Education, and a Master of Mass Communications in Integrated Marketing Communication, respectively. And finally, we are also joined this morning by Tedd Moyd. Tedd is presently serving as the Chief Executive Officer of Jasper County Neighbors United, an affordable housing agency that addresses the housing needs of low to moderate income citizens in Beaufort, Cullinan, Hampton, and Jasper counties. He is also a housing counselor, nonprofit housing developer, as well as a licensed property manager in charge. His agency assists residents with home ownership, emergency and owner-occupied repairs, and budget and financial literacy classes. Mr. Moyd serves as vice chair of the Low Country Affordable Housing Coalition, and he also represents the Jasper County Council and the City of Hardeeville on the So Loco Regional Housing Trust Fund. I think we're going to hear some more about that in just a minute. He is also the board secretary for the Jasper County School District and a member of ULI South Carolina's advisory board. So thank you, panelists, for being with us this morning. And I'm going to turn it over to Melanie to get us started with our conversation.
Excellent, excellent. Well, good morning, all. So around 9:05 or so, we will pause to then take about 10 minutes or so of Q&A with everyone that's attending today's session. So I do want to let that be known. But first, I would like to thank you all as panelists this morning for agreeing to share your expertise and experiences with us. As members of the inaugural ULI South Carolina Advisory Board, we have all collectively been having a lot of robust discussion on the topic of defining a thriving community. So I would like to open today's discussion on a topic that greatly impacts a thriving community, and that topic is health. Let's start with the current topic. So the COVID-19 pandemic. The COVID-19 pandemic has truly shined a light on health disparities that exist across our communities. So Kristy, I'm going to start with you and your role with South Carolina DHEC. Can you speak to some of those disparities that you are seeing in the communities that are disproportionately affected?
Yeah, good morning, everyone. And thanks for that question, Melanie. I really appreciate that. First, I want to say on behalf of DHEC, I am on the environmental affairs side of DHEC, but there are so many people across Team DHEC that for the last really just over a year have been filling in so many roles and doing so much. So our executive leadership team, our epidemiologist, the outreach and communications team, so many that I'm able to be just one corner of one little speck of what we've been doing as part of COVID-19 response. No, I think what you said is exactly true, Melanie. Early in the pandemic, I heard a podcast from the Aspen Institute, and they talked about how anything that was a challenge for a community, a challenge for a business, a challenge for a family before COVID-19, it was still a challenge. It was just something that was amplified, that has a spotlight on it now during the pandemic. And I think that's what we've really seen with health disparities too. The health disparities that we're seeing related to COVID-19 are things that were challenges that we're already facing communities and families across our state. Mm-hmm. And Ted and others will certainly be able to talk about their experiences shortly. And at DHEC, I've seen kind of how we've been evolving through COVID and trying to use those community engagement relationships and environmental justice relationships and the other relationships we have to try to meet the gaps as best we can. And it's something where I think we're always trying to play catch up a little bit in this time of pandemic. Early in the pandemic, we were trying to get general information out. We were trying to let people know about things. It's hard to tell people to shelter in place when they can't have a shelter. So you're trying to work with our nonprofit partners to say, how can we help meet these needs that we're seeing, and also helping those sheltering organizations have a total shift in how they're addressing the needs of their clients too. We kind of went into the summer, there was a big focus on testing. How do we make testing more available? How do we meet people where they are? How do we help them have this information, especially as we had our data that was showing those health disparities? We were seeing things geographically. We would see hotspots in some of our rural counties, obviously some hotspots in urban areas that we could even target down to. We had some Hispanic communities in certain areas of the state that were definitely having some spikes. And so we were always trying to say, how can we get the testing and the healthcare linked with those who need it. And the most recent conversation is really about vaccines. It's not just about that allocation, but access. And over all of those areas that we've kind of changed the topic, there's been an underlying thing of how do we have that trust, and how do we have the communication that we need. And really the relationships are how we can see where the challenges are sometimes. Again, when we were working with the Hispanic communities, there was a leader who told us very openly, if I go to a testing site and I see the National Guard trying to help with traffic control, we appreciate the National Guard, but that's going to deter some people from getting testing when they need it. There's some immigrant communities who are not going to have that trust in seeing that. That's not going to be a reassuring presence. We also had to think about when we were making so many things touchless and drive-through, that you're not going to reach people who don't have a car. And so we were actually working, some of my colleagues did a great job just building some partnerships with the Comet bus system, but also working with the bus systems down in the Low Country and Sumter County and some others, trying to get to those regional transportation authorities. And we have, if you go to catch the Comet today, there is testing on site at the Comet spot that's there. So you can get tested if you're using public transportation, or hopefully before you get to it as well. And so we're always trying to look again at kind of where those challenges are. Early on, again, we look at where people are already gathering. There were some big chicken, I don't know if y'all remember, but there were some the chicken plant would have a sale, and it would be on social media, and there would be, backed up cars for miles. And Gene Gadsden was telling everybody to go get chicken at I can't remember how many pounds of chicken wings you could get for like $10. It was something that was helping a lot of people who were worried about hunger and food at that point, and it was helping those businesses as well. We actually called up the Poultry Federation and said, we want to have somebody from our WIC program from EBT go out and share information of how to be more food secure, how to eat healthy, but also share some PPE, some personal protective equipment, and some COVID information, so that while people are going to be gathered in their cars coming through, can we multitask, and how do we get things to rural grocery stores? So I think a lot of it is how do we look at where people are getting their information. Another thing I saw really early on in the pandemic, there was a little meme or cartoon, and it showed Maslow's hierarchy of needs, the familiar triangle. And usually the bottom is that kind of food and shelter. Needs, right? Somebody added below that, an even more important foundational need now is Wi-Fi and battery power. So we do know, though, across the state, there's so many people who don't have that access to Wi-Fi and access to things. We couldn't just build a website and say we've done what we need to do to connect to communities. We had to say, how do we work with the grocery stores? How do we work with our faith-based community? We had a number of calls that were arranged with Dr. Bill and Warren Bolton of our staff, talking to faith-based leaders about what they needed to know for their flock, for their congregation. And, making sure we're looking at all the different ways we can connect. So that may be a long answer to a short question, but I think at the bottom line, the three keys is recognition. You got to recognize where something is a gap, where we're not sharing the information, where we're not meeting people where they are and where they need to be. We've got to really focus back on the relationships we've had. Again, started off saying the health disparities and a lot of challenges were there before COVID. The relationships that we've had long-term in a lot of our community engagement and environmental justice work have helped us be able to address pandemic needs as well. And we keep building new relationships too, and making sure we're expanding that reach. And, if you have the recognition and the relationships, you're going to have a better response in how you're meeting the needs that you have.
Absolutely, Chrissy. So it sounds like in areas where we lacked a lot of infrastructure, it really took the grassroots community members to help save the day around the COVID-19 pandemic in our communities.
Yep, it really did. And we brought together a lot of different community entities and community partners that aren't always in the same room or at the same table together.
Right.
In a virtual room, but we got them talking together of how can we go and fight the virus together.
Right. And you mentioned these were challenges and disparities and issues that existed pre-COVID, which is a great segue into another question that I actually have. And that's really around how studies have shown life expectancy gaps can greatly differ based on census tracts. And there are often large gaps seen throughout communities of color and throughout communities of low to moderate income earners. So there are two main interventions that have shown to have the largest impact on closing these gaps. And that's number one, access to safe, stable, and affordable housing. And then number two, access to healthy foods. So Ted, actually, I have this question for you. You have over 20 years of experience in affordable housing. I would love to hear your perspective on how you enhance quality of life by creating healthy communities in Jasper County. And I think you may be muted, Ted.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Tedd Moyd, the Executive Director, like you said, of Jasper County Neighbors United, a regional affordable housing agency. To answer your question, there are many impediments toward affordable housing, and most of you all know that it's limited units in location, it's government utilities, companies, and fee, high property tax value, finance and access to capital, NIMBY, and not being educated. But what are the two main problems and challenges families face when it comes to affordable housing? Like I told you, there are limited units and location. But number one, like you said, access to healthy food.
Right.
With affordable housing, most people, the location that they live in food deserts. And for those who don't know what a food desert is, it's a family that lives more than 10 or more miles away from the nearest grocery store. Well, in my community, that's a whole lot of people. I'm going to tell you what my agency does to help offset all of these issues when it comes to residents that lives in our community. With the with the healthy food part of it, we partner with the local Farmers Association and also USDA to distribute fresh fruits and veggies and meats to the tenants weekly, first come, first served base. So that's how we help with that. Second is no or limited access to healthcare and medication. This is very important. These are the people who work the most to take care of most of us, and most of them have most of the health issues. And they are the ones who would go and get checked out to see what the problem are, because they do, first of all, a lot of them they are on that borderline where they just make enough money not to qualify for any federal or state and local services, or that their company just don't provide health insurance because they don't make the 30 hours. So with that, what do? Do you pay your rent or do you buy your medication? Most of the people, they will buy their medication before they pay their rent, because you have to be well in order to work. Okay. We hadn't done a lot of work in this area, but with our new projects, we plan to be more inclusive of the whole person, to make sure that the services that they need are included in the development, so that they don't have to go outside the development for a lot of services. Third is transportation. Like I said, well, If you can't get access to food, how you can't get anywhere else because you're 10 miles or more from the nearest doctor. Also, when you live in these communities, no one, when they plan an affordable housing community, no one looks out for the amenities that goes with it. You know, it's like, okay, we built it, y'all stay there, do what you got to do, get to and fro the best way you can. So what we have done at JCNU, we teach our residents how to be neighborly. This is your community. This is where you live. If something happens to you, you would want your neighbor to come over and give you some assistance. So learn how to be cordial, work together, because this is the community that you all live in. So what they do, and I'm so proud of them, they will either loan their personal vehicle to someone in need of transportation, or they would volunteer to take that person. So that's a good thing. Where we live at in Hilton Head, Savannah area, it's marketed as, you know, a resort, you know, exclusive destination. Well, not true. There are many pockets of poverty around and in those areas. No one sees it because no one wants to see it. I see it every day. So we have to do a better job of telling the true story and helping these people become homeowners. Also, with the low wage job, JCNU owns a 42-unit apartment complex, and we also own several other homes. When something goes wrong with our property, we first go to the residents who are skilled in that area. We'll go to them and we'll hire them. We can't pay them what a professional would pay, but at least we help supplement their income. They can take the cash or they can put it toward their rent. So we help up with that. And also we go up on the street corner if we need some repair, because you have a lot of skilled laborers at the red light every morning in town looking for employment. There's, you know, so we'll get them also. And a prime example is we recently bought a new building. We have a new resident now at 37 Main Street in Hardyville. It was the old library and it was just an open space. Well, we went to the red light again on the corner. The guys came in, and if you see my office today, you would think that a licensed contractor came in here and did this work. So that's where we have to start helping the people who we serve the most. All right, the biggest elephant in the room is NIMBY, all right? You had to start somewhere before you got to that big mansion in the sky that you're living in right now. So these people need an opportunity too. I don't think that they want to continue to live in apartments all their lives and be in just one community. They need opportunities, and that's what we offer them. Education, I think the affordable workforce arena needs more education. You need more individuals who are knowledgeable in this area to work with different partners to bring a change. And on that note, I'm going to go into what are some of the suggested solutions, okay? In spite of what one may think, workforce housing contributes significant economic impacts when it is done with integrity. And you heard what I said, integrity. Just don't build it and leave me there. Help me get to the next level, okay? It also, it increases local spending power, job creation, new tax revenue for the city and county, community pride, new businesses, new infrastructure. So the next project that comes to can tap right in and keep the growth coming toward that area. That's what it's all about, improving the community. Second, policy changes. We need to start with our local, state, and national representatives and let them know that they should know already that we are in a serious housing crisis, and the policy that you have on the books evidently are not working. It needs to be changed. This is 2021. It's time to get real with it if we want to help these folks who out there every day in the trenches, going to work, coming home homeless, or coming home to a crowded home, we have to make a difference. The third thing is, I would love to see student centers created at universities and colleges throughout the United States, where students can focus on developing a curriculum for affordable workforce housing, because someone has to come up with a curriculum, and we have to interest these children in the future, because we have our idea of what a community look like today. But 20 years from now, when they are in charge, they might see something totally different. So it must be inclusive. And when I said inclusive, it needs to include healthcare centers, social service agencies, some type of transportation mode where they can get to and from, and even a police substation. Where there's a presence of the police, the population does better. And with affordable housing, I'll tell you, if you're not on top of it to manage it on a daily or weekly basis, yes, you will have problems. But if you are there on your property and you just didn't build it and left it, you will see a big difference, because they know that you care. When they see you, they'll get angry because you're correcting them all the time, but you're only correcting them for the good and the betterment for themselves. And the last thing I would like to see more of is private-public partnership. You know, it's way past time for these type of partnership to take place in our society. And there is no excuse for the USA to have a shortage of affordable workforce housing. The private sector has the money, and the public sector has the knowledge. So if those two can come together at the table and bring knowledgeable people with you and include all stakeholders, and I meant stakeholders, I'm not talking about the developers, City Hall, I'm talking about the people in the communities, who it's going to affect, who it's intended for. Everyone needs to be at the table, because most of the time when a development is made or is in the progress, the people learns about it when it's being built. Although they go to all the publications in the newspaper, advertising public hearings and the whole 9 yards, most people who are looking for affordable housing do not have time to read a newspaper or go to a meeting. They're trying to survive on a daily basis. And so if we, these ventures will not only spur economic benefits and job creation, but it will also include diversity. That's what we need more of, diversity. We just don't need one community looking one way, one color. You know, we need diversity. Although this may be a $350,000 community per home, there is somewhere we can include some minority or work out where you have a variety of people living in a community. A community is just not one race. Community is a group of people with different ethnics living together and working together. If we are truly going to be a workforce housing development, both partners, public and private, must continue to address the needs of this population. We must continue to provide opportunities such as home ownership, down payment assistance, first-time homebuyer classes, as well as budget and financial literacy, to make sure that these residents become future tax-paying citizens, add to the tax base, and own their own piece of America. And last but not least, JCNU has a program that if a tenant pays us by the 5th of every month for 2 years straight, we put them into our first-time home buyers, because you don't need to be paying me $700, $800, $900 or $1,000 a month rent when that's a mortgage. So what we do, we bring them into our first-time home buyers classes. We work with local banks, local mortgage companies to get these people good rates. We help them with down payment assistance to agencies that offer the down payment assistance, and any other assistance that we can get from anyone, public or private, to help these renters become homeowners. So on that note, I'd like to thank everyone.
Ted, that is over 20 years worth of experience and wisdom speaking. And so I thank you for sharing all of that. You not only hit on all of the social determinants of health and disparities that existed, you gave some very solid solutions. So I thank you for that. Which actually is a great segue into our last question for today. And then we'll open it up for Q&A amongst all of those that are attending today's event. So as land use professionals, we own that a lot of our historical practices have contributed to the disparities that we are all collectively discussing today. And one way to avoid these blind spots in the future is by diversifying our field to be more inclusive of people with varying backgrounds and experiences. So Shayla, your expertise is in marketing and communications, but the majority of your career has been spent working with land use professionals. I would love to hear your thoughts on how we can go about seeking and attracting diverse talent into this field.
So first of all, I just want to say thank you for having me on this morning, and good morning to everybody who's joining us virtually or on the call. I also want to say happy Black History Month to everybody on the call as well. And sending a special shout out to Ted and Kristy, because I could listen to you guys talk about your perspectives all day. Truly. And Ted, I genuinely adore you because you're so passionate about what it is that you're doing. And I love to see that because I can hear that coming through. That being said though, so to answer your question, I'll say, I feel like we just kind of have to start doing it, which I know is like a really simple answer to a very complex question. I wrote some notes down here. So if you see me looking down, it's not because I'm ignoring anybody. It's because I'm trying to make sense of what I have on this piece of paper in front of me for this question. So, the first thing I would really kind of tell someone is to really look around the room. If you are sitting at the table and everybody that looks around you are a bunch of old white men or just white men, that's a problem. If you're sitting at the table and you are surrounded by a bunch of white women, that's a problem. You're never gonna really get the true diversity of thought. And Ted kind of touched on this a little bit when he was talking about, there's no all white community, right? We do not live in a bubble. I hate to break it to you. If you think that you do not. We do not live in a bubble. We live in a very diverse community. That is something that I think last year has definitely taught us. And there's power in that, right? The more diverse your table is, the more diverse your organization is, the more diverse your neighborhood is, the better off you're going to be. And there's power in that. And so I say, once you kind of look internally, and if you notice that everybody that's at this table literally looks and or sounds like you, really stop and think about what it is that you can do. What are some of the next steps? So, for me, a lot of my experience that I have is working with, architects, engineers, and interior designers, right? Mm-hmm. It took me being in this industry for less than a year to realize that this is an industry that caters to men. And again, I'm not trying to offend anybody. I'm not trying to poke at a situation. I'm really just being very honest here. It caters to men. I feel like when you think about all the travel that you have to do, the late nights that you have to put in, the time that's spent away from your family, your wife, your kids, whatever the case may be, it really does cater to men. Women don't necessarily, especially if you're a woman who sees yourself in a position of power, like I see myself in a position of power every single day. If you're a woman who wants to have a family, hell, if you're somebody who really just wants to travel, right? It gets really complicated to do that in this particular industry. And so I can kind of see why when I walk into different situations, when I look at firm leadership, it's all men. Mm-hmm. It breaks my heart to see that because I always step back and go, wow, okay, so there are so many lost opportunities for women. There's so many lost opportunities for individuals of color. You know, how do we go about like fixing that, right? The thing I would tell somebody is you got to step outside of your comfort zone. And what I mean by that is, you know, we live in a state where at Clemson University, and I'm not knocking Clemson, so please do not come for me, even though, you know, you guys heard earlier that I graduated from the University of South Carolina, but Clemson is the only college in this state that offers an architecture program. And so if Clemson is the only place that you are going to actively recruit for architects, you're going to be like that kid spinning around a baseball bat, getting dizzy, bumping into things, running around in perpetual circles, because you're just never going to break that mold, right? You've got to look beyond the state of South Carolina. Look at North Carolina, look at Georgia. Heck, you could even look at the DMV area, which is, you know, District of Columbia, Virginia, and Maryland. You have to start recruiting individuals to come here so that they can have those opportunities and so that your workforce from the inside starts to look just a little bit more diverse. I know that there's going to be somebody on the call who's probably going to push back and say, well, how do we get people to like come to South Carolina because it's South Carolina? I am not from South Carolina. I actively chose to move my life down here. So I am like case in point for anybody who's going to sit on this call and say that there's not enough resources or there's not enough opportunities here to really do very well. That is a whole nother conversation for a whole nother day, and we don't have time for that right now. But I do think that that's one of the main challenges that I think I've noticed just in being here. I also want to point out too that, you know, we are also in a state where I think I can literally count on two hands the number of African-American architects who are emerging professionals or registered in this state. Mm-hmm. Yes, I understand that there could be the pushback when somebody comes in and says, okay, well, we know that we have this problem, but, you know, we're just not finding anyone. I will push back and say, well, then you need to do the work. You need to do the homework. You need to recruit. You need to really, again, step outside of your comfort zone and really start attracting and going after those different institutions that have exactly what it is that you're looking for. Because I promise you, once you start looking, the floodgates open. There is no shortage of diverse talent that would love to come to South Carolina. I promise you that. I could say a little bit more on that, but I want to at least give us time to kind of open it up for questions. I have a lot more that I could say, but I know I'm looking at the clock, so.
No, I appreciate that, Shayla. I appreciate that, Shayla, and I appreciate all of the discussion today. I do want to allot some time for our for those that have joined us to ask any questions that you may have, and so now's the time that everyone can turn on your cameras and we can take a couple of questions. There may be some in the chat. Hi, Amy.
Hey guys, thank you. Yeah, there's a lot of activity happening in the chat room too. So I don't actually know where to begin. So here's which is great. It's great. And again, like Melanie said, if you guys want to turn your cameras on and unmute yourself and ask a question, I'm going to start by going through some of these things that I see popping up in the chat. Everyone is really loving the conversation this morning. So thank you guys for starting, getting people fired up on a chilly Wednesday morning. Here's one from Rob Howell in Greenville. And Rob says, hi, Ted, can you point us towards some examples of good, affordable housing managers that take the kind of thoughtful approach you are referencing? So that's a very specific question. Maybe Ted can tell us a little bit about that. And then I'll continue to look in the chat here too. Okay.
First thing comes with loyalty and being committed. Also a good salary and proper training. You can, in this area, there is a need for over 200 plus managers, because no one wants to be a manager because they're not being trained properly, you know, because they are not the owner. They don't have an interest in the property. So they're going to do minimal as possible. But if you give them incentives to help create and better that property, and you can see growth and you can see your money profiting, well, then you can give them more because they'll be dedicated and they'll stay with you. Like with our property, we own the property. So we are on site, we are there. They see us, they have issues, they call us, we go. They know the faces, they know our names, we know their names, we know the units. We have 42 units, and I know everyone that lives in those 42 units. How many people live in there, who should be there, who should not be there. So it's all about getting to know your tenants and being committed to them and helping them meet their needs.
Thanks, Ted. We also have Elaine Morzala with us this morning, and Elaine is asking for if anybody wants to work on an article with her. Elaine, do you want to say anything about the journal that you are an editor of?
Sure, I would be happy to. And again, I love some of these ideas, particularly the solid ones that can give people some things to implement themselves. And so so the Real Estate Issues is a journal. It's free, so feel free to get online and subscribe to it. It's put out by the Counselors of Real Estate, which is an organization that is made up. It is a lot of white men, older white men, but we're trying to diversify. So come join us. And right now we're really trying to make a push. I mean, top 10 issues they publish every year, and clearly a lot of the issues we're talking about today are way at the top. So if anybody's interested, I'm a deputy editor, and I'd be happy to help. Kind of structure the article, etc. So just contact me. I put my email in the chat, and we'd love to see some really good concrete ways to try to change the entire, lots of different places. It's a national, well, it's actually an international organization, but primarily national. Andy Gowder's also designated, and again, if anybody's interested in the designation, Andy and I can also help walk you through that. There is I think it's I don't remember, it's like a 10 or 12 year experience in commercial real estate. But other than that, in terms of consulting and advising. So anyways, thank you, Amy.
We have a couple more minutes. Anybody else want to jump in?
This is Melvin with SCB. I have more of a statement than a question. And I do appreciate the panel today, very engaging and very good discussion. But working in the A&E industry, it is one of the most non-diverse industry that I've come across. And you're right, they have to be intentional on where they're recruiting at, because every time they ask me, like, well, we can't find candidates, and the first thing I ask, where are you recruiting? If you're not where the people are that looks different than you, then you're going to keep getting the same candidate. So thanks for that statement today too. And don't forget to push our golf tournament.
So can I quickly, and I just want to, I guess, talk this out to the entire panel too. I think, for me, I personally hated having to answer that question, because it gets back to the fact that as a Black woman, it's not my job really at the end of the day to give you the outline on, how we're supposed to fix issues surrounding diversity and how you attract different talent pool. It's not my job. It's truly your job. And I can help you, but I need to see that you're doing the work. And I think that that's kind of, I guess, the underlining theme. I think that everybody has said in some way, shape, or form. I think Kristy even said it when she kicked us off earlier in the conversation, which was that, all of these issues that we're talking about are issues that Black and Brown individuals have been discussing for decades. So there is nothing new here that we have not actively been talking about in and around our communities. I am so glad that America woke the hell up this past year to finally start having meaningful conversations. That's so great. But at some point, though, I push back all the time and I say, you have to put in the work, and readily available work. It's not like, we're sitting on this information and we're not sharing. A quick Google search will open you up to a lot of these things that we've all been actively talking about. in ways that can, I really think, push us to the next level. You know, I think about our industry and it just blows my mind that you would not actively want to have a more diverse talent pool, one that actively reflects the communities in which you are stationed in. You are actively going out seeking projects that help, or we hope will help better the communities in which we are all a part of. It is crazy to me that when we go in for these interviews and you're sitting here and you're talking to a client or an organization that is very diverse, and yet you are walking in with one of the most non-diverse groups and you're going to have a conversation with how you're going to move their mission and vision forward. So I think that these are all things that I would really encourage everybody to really take some time and really think about. Reach out to us as resources, but again, it's not our job to provide you with a detailed outline of how to fix these systemic issues or systemic challenges that honestly this industry has benefited from and continues to benefit from. And that's how I'll just leave it at that.
Yes, go ahead, Nina. We are past time, but I was going to say I would love to, if you have a burning question, let's make sure we take that.
One thing, Mr. Moyd, forgive me, that I wanted to bring up is that there is a affordable housing section with the city chamber, with the Charleston Chamber, that has been looking at this question, trying to push some tax opportunities to create more affordable and workplace housing across the city. That may be a group you want to get in front of or work with. But when it comes to, I'm going to talk about the one thing I know well. I'm a geologist. I run an engineering office. Melvin and I know each other well. And I wanted to say, I love the Hollywood Squares. Thank you. But that aside, I'm in the process of looking to bring some women in right now. And I hate to say it, you know, I call up, I ask, and in one or two cases, I have, my recruiter works with the local office here. I won't mention it, but she knows that I'll look at women in engineering and that they will be treated as equal. And one of the young men who worked for me on a project, or who has started with our office and is doing well, was actually stopped at a site and told, no, you can't work for Nina, you're a guy. I don't go that far. We try to keep a mix. But of the recruiter I have actually says, I met this engineer you have to meet the other day. You'll really like her. And she gets in, just blows away everyone. Florida actually is making an offer on her right now, or putting together a proposal. But it's one of those things where you do have to say, almost, you know, you can begin to build up this team. For some reason, people send their daughters' resumes to me, not their sons. Though right now I'm at an all-time low with only 3 women in an office of what should be about, we had someone move on to something bigger and better this spring. I think I'm at 9. It's a small group, but it's interesting to me because people, once you begin to do that, search you out. I had some young male friends the other day say, you know, we've got this, the one guy was seeing a chemical engineer, she's helping him, she and he have formed a business, and he was just tired of everyone asking him the questions that he had to turn to her to get the answers to. And I said, you know, he is the one in the strongest situation here to go, gosh, you know, we've really got to talk to the engineers about this. What do you say, dear? And at the table in front of these people so that they'll begin to see this is an equal partner. You either talk to her or you're not getting your answers. And that is one thing that men can do in this situation. It's something that older women can do. It's one of those things that we have to push it and look ourselves. And I pointed out Melvin because he's the only one in the same situation where he's looking at recruits, et cetera, in an equally grossly male-dominated field. But it is something I don't know how y'all promote. I don't know how people are attracted to your business, et cetera. But once I started to find there's a pattern. The lady who I use, her father works with the same firm. He's always sent me guys. It's just one of those things. She is the one who will get me mixed resumes of, different backgrounds, different sex, different color, et cetera. And once you find that person, especially considering the quality of the people she gets in front of me, you latch on. And that was all I wanted to say. That's we can be the people doing the promoting and making this happen.
Thank you, Nina, for that. And I think what you're talking about is allyship. Like, how can we be better allies to not only people of color but women? Real estate industry is hard for people if you're not white and male, right? So that's a sad commentary, but it's true. So I would invite everybody to also seek out me and Melanie. Under Melanie's leadership, we're putting together a statewide ULI South Carolina Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion committee, where we'll be thinking really hard about what we can do, ULI as an organization, and also as an organization who supports a real estate industry that is waking up, unfortunately, maybe a little late, but waking up nonetheless. And so invite you guys to reach out to me, Melanie, and again, Kristy, Ted, and Shayla are all members of our ULI advisory board too. We thank you so much for your participation in that. We put that advisory board together to help us recognize some blind spots. And so we're looking at some major improvements and different ways of doing things over the next couple of years. And so stay with us. It's a marathon, not a sprint. And so these things will take a long time to undo, but we're willing to put that work in. And then, so I'll leave it to Melanie to close us out because we are running a little bit over, but it's been a great conversation. So Melanie, do you have any other?
I would just like to close this out. It's been an absolutely great conversation. I appreciate us today creating a trusted environment and space for us to have these open and vulnerable conversations, because that's what it's going to continue to take. Mm-hmm. And so I do appreciate everyone that has joined us. Thank you to our panelists. Thank you for opening up such a wonderful discussion today, and truly appreciate everyone. Have a good one. Take care.
Yeah, with that, we'll close. Thanks, everybody.
Melanie. Hey, Melanie.
Yes.
Melanie.
Someone call my name.
Hey, this is Susan McClarty. I'm calling in on my phone. How are you?
Good. How are you doing?
Hey, just a quick question that I wanted to ask, and we can talk about it more. I'm excited to hear about y'all's committee. But if you have any recommendations around using metrics, like with creating, for example, with the Homeless Alliance, like I've been asking since I took this position to have, my leadership look like the same kind of mix of folks that we serve in our emergency shelters. And everyone's like, yes, we want to do it. But then when it's time to do it, they're hesitant, and so I'm like, we need metrics. Like, if we say we're going to do it, like, how do we hold everyone accountable to making sure we're putting, we're changing the players on the leadership bench?
Susan, excellent question. And one, that's always going to be near and dear to my heart because I have an analytics background. And with that.
Oh, good. Okay. I need that. I need that kind of background.
But we are actively right now as ULI looking at creating what our measures of success will be, and then creating a balanced scorecard. So there will be more to come in that space. It's a little premature for us right now today, but we are in that process. And so if there's some key learnings as we go through this, I would love to also share some key learnings with you.
that would be awesome. Like, I can't even tell you how awesome that would be, because I just feel like I'm banging my head against the wall.
Understood.
You know?
Understood.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for
So,
the question.
okay. Well, keep me posted on that. Thanks for letting me jump on the end here as y'all were wrapping up.
Absolutely. We'll stay connected.
Okay. Thanks,
Okay.
Melanie.
All right. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
You too.
Right. I think that's a wrap. It was a great conversation.
Yeah, it was great. Thank you all.
Yeah.
Thank you, Robin and